Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Attack Productions. Today I'm Bancroft being joined once again by Jimmy, Jake, and like always, Fluff.
Remember my name this time.
Hey, what's going on, y'all?
What's up, beautiful people?
And today's matchup is Slug versus Gogeta. I am playing Slug while Kevin is playing Gogeta, but Kevin isn't here today, so we're going with the video anyways. Very interesting matchup. And for those of you who have stuck with the Slug that makes your opponent draw cards, put in the comment down below what your kind of take is on that, because I could go back and forth with this deck, because the idea of give your opponents cards and technically thin their deck out is nice, but also a lot of the cards gives your opponent the ability to put cards back in their deck, so it helps them cycle what they need for their later turns, which could be problematic, and that's why you're supposed to apply enough aggro pressure, which this deck can do, to make them combo that off. So I'm just kind of curious what other people think about that deck. Put it down in the comments. But let's go. Let's get into this.
So I think Slug is like the closest thing we have to like a group hug deck in Dragon Ball. Because every time that I've got paired up against Slug, it's just like, oh yes, this is gonna be such a fun match. I just get to play all my good cards and shuffle back all the shit that I don't want. But also it's kind of scary too, because I don't know if we'll see any of that in this particular matchup, but like Slug can just like vomit in a field.
It definitely can. I will say, as a reminder, this past weekend was best of 3. And I got plenty of times in all my matches to kind of like just spew the whole board and showcase what this deck can do. And I've had plenty of times where I had to do a more control route, but still get the job done. So overall, no matter what way you take this deck, it can be fun. And this 1-drop Slug is such a beautiful card. As long as your opponent has 7 cards, you could play a Slug Army card with 19,000 or less. And I was kind of going over this was the particular combo killer one. So,
which combo killing is always insane. Just in any deck that can run it, combo killing is always something worth running.
And it's especially nice that the leader swing makes your opponent draw a card. And then like pretty much everyone's going to take that first damage. So this 1-drop is just really, really synergistic.
So, Slug ideal turn 2 is when you want to go. But if you're playing against someone who's aware of it, like something like this right here, knowing how to kind of stop the engine really hurts. So with Gogeta being played, swings at the 1 in rest mode, uses this ability to warp the 1-drop, causing me to have a slower start from here on out. And I already had a slower start, not having my Unison on board.
So, again, if you are newer to the channel, Kevin is one of our newer players. He bought into a collection from one of our retiring players. Rest in peace, Tanner. Not rest in peace, Aaron.
I was taking a drink, man. Come on now.
So he has gone through and he's trying to play like every deck that he's heard people talk about, and decks that sound interesting to him. So he is a new player playing with very expensive cards. So do give him some slack if you see any misplays in here, because he is learning.
I tried to catch him as we went, because I found myself, for sure in the first match, kind of like reminding him of like the Kai and his warp and how he could play the PyCon and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I felt like his second game and his game after that, I think Fluff, you played him first round and you kind of helped him along as well.
Yeah, I think this is a deck that Tanner had already put together. So when he, inherited Tanner's collection, this deck was just already put together. So no knock against Kevin, but he didn't do the footwork on building the deck. So there were probably a lot of cards in here that he just didn't understand the reasoning for those cards being in there. So one of the things that I tried to coach him through was like, why is this card here? Why is this card here? You're going to use this card for this situation. You're going to use this for this. And I don't know that I got a chance to talk to him about the Kai. So I'm glad that you definitely did, because it was really funny after our match. He kept saying the deck was garbage. And I was like, no, man, like, this is honestly one of the best decks right now. Like, you just have to, you kind of have to earn those stripes. This deck can be a bear to deal with.
Yeah, and for viewers, think about a situation where somebody just hands you a completely sleeved out deck, says, here, play it, and you have no prior experience playing with this, and then also being thrown on camera as well, as Bancroft with a big pitchfork poked him into sitting down on the camera. In his heelish nature. Luckily, Bancroft didn't Heroine's lineage of Gogeta off his field and then decide to steal it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Watch the Gogeta versus Soul Striker video for more context.
You just like bring that up, don't you?
I'm bringing it up to progress the storyline, Bancroft.
This is how we sell tickets, Bancroft. Come on, boomer.
So I want to go over a thing that I regret, which isn't something I normally would regret, but losing the 1-drop really does suck. I charged one turn 1 and played this one right afterwards. And it just put me in a bad spot, unfortunately. So here I'm trying to do whatever I can just to search the deck for stuff.
Yeah. That if you let those thwartings take over, they will. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thwarting it's been said to death that it's just such an overtuned card that just text on card wise, it's probably one of the most powerful cards in the game.
Yeah, for sure. For the energy investment to play it, absolutely.
So even a newer player that does not understand the ins and outs of this specific type of deck and this type of playstyle, you can go a long way just by boarding that card alone.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I will say, this past weekend was a best of 3 without going too much further than that. This is round 3. And so he's kind of had a chance to experiment against this deck, knowing what to go against. So this round is definitely a lot tougher for me to go up against as well, since he has the knowledge of what he needs to do. So I got to work a way of trying to play what I need to do while he's doing what he can to stop me from doing what I did.
Yeah, I think Kevin is getting in that spot for new players where I think he's starting to realize that generalizations of how to deal with X deck don't always work. And that it's really dependent on game state. More than how do you deal with this deck, it's how do you deal with this particular game state. And because the more that I played him, the more his concept of that starts to evolve. And that's a huge compliment towards him, considering how long he has been playing or how little he's been playing.
If I'm correct, he came from
those skills, those skills transfer over from other games too. So, as someone like him who has come from Magic into Dragon Ball, that's one of the concepts that carries over the best is that you can't always beat a square peg with a round hole. You know, sometimes you need a triangle or a trapezoid or something.
Hexagonal dildo. What?
Exactly.
Yeah, that. Okay.
Whatever you have at your disposal.
Are we getting demonetized?
No, we are now.
I don't know what you're talking about. All right. So, in this turn, he's definitely just going all out. There's not much that I can do, unfortunately. Like bringing out the small guys. He's not taking the life to boost him, if I'm correct. Yeah. Okay, I had to make sure. He went straight to Super Common. This is one of those instances where I'm like, you're going to bottom a card, right? And part of that also is, as the Slug player who gets you to draw cards, I'm like, are you going to draw 2 cards? Just try and get my opponent to get rid of as many cards as possible as well.
Just on paper, reading the text of both leaders, you have to think that Slug just has a fantastic matchup against Gogeta Xeno, just solely off of how many cards are displaced from the Xeno player's deck.
I will say in round 1, he had probably about 5 cards left in his deck.
Ooh.
From the combination of him warping 5. And I think even I remind him, like, it says up to, like, you don't have to do the full value.
That was one thing that I discussed with him, is because every turn he was sending 5, whether he was awakened or on the front side. And I was like, look, man, you really only need to do that like 2, maybe 3 times before you have a full setup. I was like, if you keep doing that, you will deck yourself out. And I was like, there are decks that are out there, maybe. You'll see one today that could deck you out theoretically if you do that. And then he got paired up against you in the very next round, which I thought was funny. But hopefully he learned, but it seems like he has.
Yeah. So this is very rough. Like, I knew him putting it out that the Martial Melee back out with another open energy could just get him to have more cards and more attacks on his turn 2, well, his turn 3. So I just had to use a Dormant to clip the boards, warp an extra card to get out of the way. And this way I was like, look, you'll get one more attack from here on out, man. Just trying to slow that from, like, just potentially, because he could potentially kill him. He hasn't overwhelmed yet either. And I know he plays overwhelmed cards. So, like, he could have paid the 1, brought out the 2 1-drops. Boom, overwhelm right there. And just force me to either burn my entire hand if I didn't use the Dormant potential.
You said this was game 3, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you got the first round and then he got the second round? Is that what happened?
Correct.
Or second game? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I was typically trying to show more videos of, like, a more back and forth experience. And, like, my game 1 technically would show you what the Slug deck can do if you let it to go off. But it was too one-sided. And since he kind of knew how to counter that on game 2, he was able to stop that. So in game 3, I felt like we still had this nice little balance here. I'm still kind of, like, in a slight disadvantage because of how well this deck can pile once you know how to go up against Slug. But I do have
Slug answers. Is literally Pac-Man from Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, that's hilarious. Pure advantage camel munching a noob. Like, but once you know how to beat it or play around it, it becomes a much more uphill battle for the Slug player.
And I have some interesting tech that I felt like I put in here, which was really nice. And I don't think I get a chance to demonstrate much of it during this round, unfortunately. But I play, like, the 1-drop Kakunsa. Is it Kakunsa?
Kakunsa, yeah.
The 5-drop Gohan and stuff like that. Just like random 1-techs I feel like could be important down the road. I also play the 5-drop Boo.
I was a big fan of this list when you put it together. Like, you were kind of talking me through, like, what it does turn to turn. And it honestly, it just seems like it's fun to play.
So, like most leaders who restand energy, you just hate having to wait on your opponent's turn, but it happens sometimes.
It does happen.
So now I'm going to my turn 3, knowing that this is my 3 energy. So what I do in this turn matters. And there's always reasons for things. I did charge the Negate Kakunsa, which could pop a card. But in the long run, that's not as good as other things could be.
Now, as a best of 3, we can see that this is sped up. Does time become an issue for you guys? Like, are you guys, like, do you know how much time you have left in the round at this point? Is that affecting how fast you're trying to play or the pressure to make the correct play?
I will say there came a point where Jimmy walked over like, hey, you guys are getting pretty close. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And that does add a layer to me, knowing also the new time rules, in my opinion, aren't the greatest. And maybe we'll go over that a little bit later on the road. But it is what it is. You can't do much about it. So here, I free played the dual attack Slug from the oh my goodness, this is from the anniversary
box.
Yeah.
I have never seen this card in my entire life.
It's an amazing card. So if all your energy is mono green, you and your opponent draw one card. They do not put that card back in their deck, which is nice. So it's just more cards. Granted, yes, they keep more cards, but it doesn't allow them to put more cards in their deck. I haven't also covered this yet. The dice I put on the mat as a reminder to myself, to my opponent, you have this many cards you could put back underneath your deck if you choose to. So, it is a dual attack as long as you have 3 energy. And if your opponent has 7 or more cards in their hand, it gains 6,000 when you attack. So I'm really just pressuring the Gogeta because I know his hand, he had like 16 or 18 cards in his hand, and I knew that there wasn't a lot that I could do to actually finish him off this game or this turn, so for my current hand, without... I didn't think I could successfully do it, let's put it that way. So I had to think of a way of doing what I could do this turn and maintain a defensive turn on my following turn. So that's why I swung pretty much 4 attacks into his Gogeta to thin his hand down, which kind of hurts as a Slug player, because you want your opponent to have more cards so you could do more effects. Like, because if your opponent has 10 or more cards, you could free play cards, which is, you saw that I played a 2-drop from my drop area to turn over him, because I didn't want that 2-drop to go to the warp. I wanted to use it on my following turn by paying 1 energy and sending it to warp so both of us draw 2 cards. And now I'm in the position where I gotta just hold back now and go into this. Sometimes, though, when time is a thing, going back off what you were saying, Fluff, you forget, at least I did, unfortunately, certain key elements. And this next play will kind of showcase that. He has 4 open energy. He swings with a battle card first. Try and get that double strike in right away. You can see my hand right now, and you know what I'm going for. Activate battle, Kabito Kai. This is not Hachiyak. It does not stop your opponent's entire turn. It only stops them from attacking with battle cards. So they can outright swing with a leader. They could go and swing with unisons. Yeah. So I made that realization after doing it. I'm like, oof. I'm kind of in a bind right now. Which maybe was still the best play because it lessens the aggro. But now I have to rely on his potential next 2 attacks. Me being able to out combo that, knowing he still has a fatter hand than I.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Gogeta as a deck naturally, as the game, it's like Agents of Destruction. The longer the game goes on, the more likely it is that their hand is going to dwindle and fizzle, despite the fact that they still draw. But sometimes they'll end up having to overwhelm from their hand, or start using Union Fusion from their hand, or they're playing their 1-drops by just casting them. So you're just feeding him energy, which is wild. Like, you're just fueling that hand, which is really scary behind a Gogeta player.
And he even took the life just to ensure him extra cards in his hand. And here he goes ahead and combos all out. I can't remember the exact number he got up to, but it was pretty up there. He combos the Kai, and he tries to play. I'm like, no, you paid the one for the combo, so it has to stay in the combo. And I think I managed to pull 2 super combos out.
I see 1 in your hand so far. It looks like a super combo anyway.
And here I justified because he comboed out.
No.
I had to add another card to get that extra back up to 20k, because during your opponent's turn, if your opponent has 7 or less cards, your leader loses 5,000 battle power. So definitely,
that's wild. So
now let me go Errata Delay. This was actually turn 2. We did go 3 rounds. And Fluff, you had asked about the best of 3 rolling. That is rough. And it is rough because I like that no matter what, there's no longer going to be a draw. But the problem with that, though, is that we went to round 3, and Jimmy's like, hey, let you guys know it's time. You guys got to turn on. We just started. We haven't even played our 3 cards yet. And this is kind of what you're seeing right here is the start of that. But we end up with the same life, but because he's able to amass a board just as fast as I can, but he focused on clearing my board while taking my life down to the same as his, he was able to grab the 3rd round win because he had more battle cards on board.
Yep.
And that was just a rough way to lose. I was like, oh man, I would rather took them to draw. But it is what it is. It's what they're trying to push, and that's fine. You just got to keep that in mind. Like, if you can't guarantee to snag that more life, get more cards on the board.
Maybe you sideboard in cheap battle cards or cheap removal for game 3.
That's it. I feel like it's going to encourage players to play decks like Agents.
So somebody is going to win the game because they played the 1-drop TN that spawns 4 multiform tokens, and that card is going to be a $200 promo.
And then it'll get banned.
Your opponent's turn,
messing with time.
They pass with, like, say you're both at 4 life, right? They can awaken, get 3 tokens right then and there, then negate with the champion TN to get 2 more cards per negate they use.
Yeah, if they're in red green.
It's just, oh man. Well, with that being said, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed today's video. Keep in mind, there's buttons down below while Fluff does the outro and on screen.
Really unfortunate that you lost there, but congrats, Kevin. That was well played, perfectly played. Bancroft made a minor slip, and you took full advantage of it. So kudos to you there, sir. Kudos. As always, read your cards, know your plays. Let us make the mistakes so that you don't have to. And Fluff out.